All across Asia, people are reaching for their smartphones to enter a forbidden world: online gambling. Thousands of sites entice players with promises of easy money just to tap away. But campaigners warn it's never been easier to lose big. While online gambling is banned in most of Asia, authorities struggle to stamp it out. DW met up with one Indonesian man taking a big gamble by playing poker for a living.
The moment the cards are dealt is when the adrenaline starts to flow. And that is when, let's call him Raja, clocks in for work. Although it is strictly illegal in Indonesia, for him playing poker is not just a game, it's a job. Raja therefore wants to stay anonymous. He is one of many Indonesians trying to earn a living from online gambling.
I've really loved gambling all my life. Finally, I'm able to play online, which makes things a lot easier and safer. You don't even have to leave the house in order to play around with poker.
Internet gambling is a growing problem. The Indonesian government says online gambling transactions totaled almost 10.63 billion euros in 2022 alone. But while all forms of gambling are banned in the country, cracking down on online gamblers has turned out particularly difficult.
From 2018 to August 2022, the government has shut down well over 500,000 sites and accounts that are strongly suspected of being related to online gambling. So, we've been trying to get ahead of the problem.
But just closing sites or freezing bank accounts doesn't really change much as long as the providers are situated abroad. New sites continually appear, and in Indonesia almost everyone has a mobile phone and an e-wallet. So tracing individual gamblers like Raja is very hard. On good days, he can earn as much as 345 euros a day from online gambling, more than the average monthly income of Jakarta residents. But there are not always good days.
I once played and simply lost around 14,000 euros in one night. Crazy, right? That was a moment when I wanted to quit. And I did. But only for a week. And then I started playing again.
The lockdowns during the pandemic have caused Raja to spend even more time gambling. But no one can predict who will develop an addiction, this clinical psychologist tells me. Gambling becomes a problem when it can no longer be controlled.
When someone first tries, it creates a feeling of pleasure, and that feeling of pleasure releases dopamine, a hormone that creates feelings of comfort, happiness, and pleasure. That's what finally makes people think, if I want to be happy, then I have to keep playing. It turns into a vicious cycle.
Raja even got his wife into gambling. The fact that they can potentially make money from anywhere, such as on a beach in Bali, is particularly appealing to them. But like tens of thousands of other addicts in Indonesia, one bad roll of the dice could see their money swept away in the blink of an eye.
And joining me now for more is Charles Livingston from Monash University. He's an expert in the relationship between gambling problems and physical health, and joins me now from Melbourne. Mr. Livingston, what is the impact of gambling on physical health?
Well, most of the impacts of gambling are related to mental health issues, but there are a number of emerging issues that we can now observe with people who gamble a lot. One of them is their general physical health is not particularly good. It tends to be much worse than that of people who don't gamble once you adjust for other factors. And that includes issues around heart disease, coronary disease generally. Obviously, there are problems associated with people not having enough money to house themselves or feed themselves properly. And it's one of the key, what we call the key determinants of health. It's one of those factors, socioeconomic factors, which has a long-term impact on people's health and well-being. Just like, as we know, being poor or not having enough money has a very big impact on one's physical health, and exactly the same phenomena occurs with gambling.
You know, I'd like to talk to you about online gambling in particular, because even though it is still illegal in most of Asia, there are experts who say they are seeing a trend towards legalization. Given what you've just said to me and your own research, how concerning would that be?
Look, I mean, it's booming. Online gambling is booming in much of the low and middle income world, particularly in Africa, and as you just identified, Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and South Asia. And it's there because people have mobile phones these days, so it's very easy for them to download an app and to begin to, develop this habit. And for many people, particularly people in poverty, it sort of holds out the promise of being able to make some money. But in fact, of course, the house always wins, and it's a terrible way of thinking about making money, but it's very addictive. And it can be very problematic. And what we're seeing now is, just as the cigarette companies expanded into low and middle income countries when, the first world started prohibiting tobacco products, well, we're seeing the same phenomenon now with gambling, particularly online gambling.
You know, we have a report from Indonesia where gambling is illegal, and yet online gambling remains a scourge. Why is it so hard for governments to crack down on online gambling?
Well, I mean, because it's online, it's very hard for governments to see it happening. I mean, it's easier to crack down on terrestrial gambling, but that hasn't always been possible, even with the best will in the world. So in some countries, in Scandinavia and increasingly in Australia, we have been banning online sites with server blocking, with IP internet service provider blocking. In Finland and in Denmark, they're blocking transactions to offshore accounts. So those sorts of actions can be undertaken and they will have some effect. But, at the end of the day, it's a game of what we call whack-a-mole. As you extinguish one site, another one pops up. I think what we really need is a global treaty to ensure that online gambling, where countries want to have it, they can have it, but when they don't want to have it, countries must cooperate in order to stop it from penetrating those markets where people decide they don't want to have it.
One last question. If you think you are addicted to online gambling, what can you do?
Well, fortunately, there's a number of things you can do. I mean, the first one is to reach out to someone for help. Most countries these days have gambling help services or counselling services which you can contact and which will help you with advice about how to cut back or how you might be able to get rid of your gambling account or whatever. Even if you can't find even if you can't find a service in your own country, you can often go online and find a service which will give you internet-based advice about how to cut back. But the most important thing to do is don't keep it a secret. Make sure that you let your family and friends know that you've got a problem and that you're doing something about it. That's a really good step.
We'll leave it there for the time being, but thank you so much for your insights today. Charles Livingston from Monash University. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.